and welcome to 5-Minute Family Law. Today's episode is the third and final video in a series about separation. But today we're going to leave the law behind, and instead we're going to talk about the emotional aspects of separation. I'm going to introduce you to a series of books that I think you might find helpful. We're going to talk about how to establish and maintain healthy boundaries between you and your ex. We're going to talk a little bit about how to talk to your kids about separation. And finally, we're going to talk about some steps that you can take to protect your cybersecurity now that your relationship with your ex has come to an end. The breakdown of a long-term romantic relationship is hard, and it is hard for everybody. In fact, mental health professionals will commonly tell you that the end of a long-term relationship is about the most difficult thing you will go through in your entire life, second only to the death of a close loved one like a parent or a child. And the clients that come to see me, not only are they grieving the loss of their relationship, because believe it or not, you mourn the end of a long-term relationship the way you mourn the passing of someone close to you. But they're also filled with really intense, complicated emotions like anger, anxiety, and fear for the future. And the anxiety and fear is about things that are, almost existentially fundamental to your life. Like, what if my ex tries to change the children's name? Or what if my ex wants to move away with the kids to a different province? To more immediate personal problems like, how will I be able to afford to keep buying groceries and keep a roof over my head and the heads of the children? And these are really complicated issues. And of course, the emotional intensity that comes with the end of a long-term relationship is often one of the things that can be an important tipping point that drives people towards high conflict litigation when really the resolution of the legal issues arising from the end of a romantic relationship are hardly best dealt with in court. Other ways of dealing with those issues, such as mediation, arbitration, and collaborative law, are almost always to be preferred. Thankfully, there are a series of very good books that you can find that will help you go through this difficult time. One of my favorite authors about the emotional aspects of separation is a guy named Dr. Robert Emery. And in addition to being a professor of psychology, Dr. Emery is also a counselor, and the best things about his books is that he takes his experiences with the hundreds, if not thousands of people he's helped through their separations and uses them to illustrate the points he's trying to make. So one of my favorite books of Dr. Emery's is this one. It is called The Truth About Children and Divorce, Dealing with the Emotions So You and Your Children Can Thrive. And so this one talks about how you can ensure that you're putting your children's needs ahead of your own. It talks about how to manage conflict with your ex, how to build and maintain healthy boundaries with your ex, and it talks, of course, about why it's almost always better to resolve the legal issues out of court than in court. And that book pairs nicely with another book of Dr. Emery's that I really like called Renegotiating Family Relationships, Divorce, Child Custody, and Mediation. This book is really comprehensive. It goes into the subject matter in depth, and both of these books are really easy to read, and I can't recommend them enough. But, of course, the end of your relationship isn't just about you and your ex. It's also about your kids. And this book here is, without a doubt, one of my all-time favorite books. It's called Helping Your Kids Cope with Divorce, The Sandcastle Way, and it's by Gary Newman. And it's not just for people that are divorcing, it's also for unmarried couples that are breaking up. And what's so cool about this book is that it talks about children's experience of their parents' separation from an ages and stages perspective. And so what you'll learn from the book is how an infant experiences the separation of its parents is different than how a toddler experiences it, or a child who's 5 years old, or a child who's a tween, or a child who's a teenager. And really helpfully, the book also includes a bunch of age-appropriate scripts that you and your ex can use to explain the breakdown of your relationship to your kids. And, and they're written, depending on the age of the child and the child's emotional maturity. And you can adapt them to suit your own particular circumstances. I mean, and I'll give you a sneak peek into what those scripts say, and what they almost all say, and they say this consistently, is that when you're talking to your kids about the end of your relationship, the most important message to give to them is that even though your relationship with the other parent is over, no matter what, you will always still and unconditionally love your children. Your relationship with the other parent may be changing, but your relationship with them never will. It's a critical message. Now, there are other books that talk about how to deal with your ex after separation, because the reality is that if you have kids, you are going to remain involved in each other's lives for an indefinite period of time. So you might as well get ahead of that particular problem as soon as you can. So here's one from Judith Rabinor called Befriending Your Ex After Divorce. It's about peacemaking. It's about how to make your life better. It's about how to make the kids' lives better, and how to make your ex's life better as you work together and raise your children after separation. This book here by Dr. Shirley Thomas is called Parents Are Forever, and it provides a step-by-step approach to making the difficult transition from your former relationship as romantic partners to your new relationship as individuals who are both engaged in the business of parenting your children. Another book that you might find helpful is written by Karen Christensen, and it's called Co-Parenting from the Inside Out. And one of the things I like about this book is that it's almost entirely filled with the author's interviews with parents who have separated and then gone through the difficult process of trying to rebuild their lives in separate places while co-parenting their children. It's got some really important and I think very valuable lessons. And in a way, it's a precursor to this next book, which is called Caught in the Middle by Carla Garrity and Mitchell Barris. And this book isn't for everybody. It's for those parents who find themselves in a constant and constantly high level of conflict. And it provides some helpful tips that you can use to avoid capturing the children in the middle of the conflict between you and your ex, and trying to keep them out of things. Finally, one of my favorite books for children, and there are tons of books about separation for children, but one of my favorites is this one by Max Sindel. It's called Surviving Your Parents' Divorce, The Bright Side. And the author, Max Sindel, wrote this book as an undergraduate going to university. And Max is a child whose parents separated when he was younger. And this book provides practical advice for children. And it provides insight into what it's like to go through the separation and divorce of your parents. It talks about how children can avoid getting triangulated in their parents' conflict, and a bunch of other things that I think are extraordinarily helpful for young children, especially children whose parents are veering towards the higher conflict end of things. Boundaries are important to establish, and what I mean by boundaries are essentially a kind of rule book. Your relationship with your ex has changed, and along with that comes a bunch of other changes. For example, it's no longer cool to drop by your ex's work whenever you have a passing fancy. Likewise, it's not cool to give your ex a phone call in the middle of the night because you're feeling sad or depressed or regret the collapse of the relationship. And so boundaries are about establishing the new limits of your relationship. And so clients of mine have adopted boundaries that include things like about limiting when your ex or how often your ex can contact you by email or by text or by telephone. It's about things like I won't take phone calls after 9 o'clock at night. It's about you can email me about these subjects but not about these subjects. Or you can text me but only once per hour, or maybe only a handful of times a day. And boundaries also, though, include setting boundaries about privacy. And so now that your relationship with your ex has changed, it's not cool to open your ex's mail, even if it comes to your house. Your ex has reasonable expectations of privacy, and it's now your job to respect those boundaries of privacy, even though that kind of privacy may not have been a part of your relationship prior to separation. So, don't open your ex's mail. Don't listen to the voicemail that is left for your ex. Don't read your ex's email, even if you have the ability to hack into your ex's email account because you know the password. Also, don't read or make photocopies of your ex's journals or diaries. You need to build and maintain those boundaries that have to do with privacy and the issues that are personal to you and are no longer shared with your ex. And just as you have an expectation that your ex will respect your privacy, you need to respect your ex's privacy. Now, in fairness, the things that usually drive people to go through their ex's private papers are usually fears that when push comes to shove in the litigation process, they won't be able to get access to those documents. Their ex will hide them. But the thing is, in Canada, we don't resolve legal disputes as if we have cards up our sleeves. In fact, all of the cards are spread out and on the table for everybody to see. There are no secrets. Each person has an obligation to produce the documents that are relevant to their own case as well as to their ex's case. And whether you're going through litigation, which has a built-in process of exchanging these documents called discovery and disclosure, or whether you're resolving your dispute through mediation, arbitration, or collaborative negotiation, there will always be the opportunity to ask for and get copies of all of the documents that might conceivably be relevant to the legal issues in your case. So, if we're talking about children, that might include copies of their health records, their report cards, psychoeducational reports, counseling records in certain circumstances, and other kinds of psychological reports. In terms of yourself, they might be copies of your own medical or mental health records. It might be copies of your employment history, your curriculum vitae, your resume, and stuff like that. You'll have an obligation to produce and an entitlement to get copies of your income tax records, bank statements, credit card statements, pension savings statements, pensionable accounts like RRSPs, LIFs, and LIRAs, and things like that. You're obliged to give and entitled to get copies of corporate financial statements, copies of corporate income tax statements, all of those things. And so please rest assured that the odds are almost perfect that you will be able to get copies of the documents you need at some point down the road. Maybe not right away, but you'll be entitled to get them in the middle of whatever dispute resolution process you choose. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's important to respect your ex's privacy, because respecting your ex's privacy is going to lower the level of conflict between you and them, and it will also minimize the level of conflict that you experience in whatever dispute resolution process that you ultimately choose to resolve those disputes. But you can respect your ex's privacy while remaining confident that as a result of the discovery and disclosure process, you're going to be entitled to see copies of all the documents that are relevant to your ex's case and relevant to your own case. But respecting privacy isn't just limited to the documents that your ex has left lying around. It's also part of like the bigger picture of the boundaries between you and your ex. And so, among other things, it means not keeping close tabs on your ex's Facebook account. It means not following them on Grindr, Tinder, or Plenty of Fish so that you can keep a track on what they're doing with their dating life now that your relationship with them is over. And coupled with that is also a warning that I want to provide about the importance of not trash talking your ex on social media. And that includes not only saying nasty things about them, but about not posting notes and letters and court documents or correspondence from their lawyer on things like Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever other social media platform you happen to be engaged in. And you know, I can't warn you strongly enough the extent to which misbehavior like this will come back and bite you in the ass. What do you think the judge will think when the judge is provided with a photocopy of the Facebook page on which you have just spent the last 5 minutes ranting about your ex and your ex's misdeeds? If you need a watchword, let it be this. Every time you put pen to paper or finger to keyboard, imagine how will this look if it appears as an exhibit to someone's affidavit. And if warnings about the impact on litigation and other dispute resolution processes aren't enough. Think about your kids. You know the saying that once something is on the internet, it's on there forever? That is true. So even if your kids right now are too young to use a computer or access your Facebook account, they will be at some point. And you need to ask yourself, what will my children think of me as a result of reading the things I've put on social media about the breakdown of my relationship and my feelings and attitudes towards my ex? And speaking about things that will come back to haunt you, there are a whole bunch of other bad behaviors that you need to avoid. No matter how mad you are at your ex or how much you feel victimized by your ex's misbehavior, do not waste your time or your ex's time making bogus complaints to their employer, or making bogus complaints to the police or to the child protection people. Don't make complaints about your ex to their professional governing body, like the College of Physicians and Surgeons of British Columbia or the Law Society of British Columbia. Don't post mean-spirited reviews about them on Yelp or on professional ratings websites. Don't report your ex to the CRA for the time they underreported their taxes 5 years ago. Don't do that. None of those things are going to come back and ultimately help you in terms of your legal case. And again, remember, ask yourself, what would a judge think if this information or that complaint or that statement appears attached to someone's affidavit as an exhibit? Finally, I'm just going to say a few words about cybersecurity. This was something that I never talked about when I started to practice law, but it's something that I talk about all the time now. And what I'm referring to are the small, prudent steps that you can take to protect yourself and your privacy from any mischief at the hands of your ex. Now, I'm not saying that your ex is going to stoop to this level. Very few people engage in this sort of misbehavior. But the reality is that it's easy as a snap of your fingers to change your passwords. The difficulty is remembering all the places and organizations and institutions with whom you do have passwords. That's the hard part. So starting within the house, and a really good example is your Wi-Fi router. The odds are very good that the password to your Wi-Fi router was never changed from the original factory settings or from the password that was programmed in by the Shaw or the TELUS installer. Change your password now. But moving beyond that, you need to think about the Internet of Things. And it's not just Wi-Fi enabled switches or plugs. It's Wi-Fi enabled dishwashers, refrigerators, and clothes dryers. More importantly, it's things like security cameras, doorbells, especially the doorbells that activate when they sense movement or record video when somebody presses them. And also, don't forget the doorbell that you can unlock with your smartphone. Change the password for your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, your computer. Change the password for your email account. But don't forget that you don't only access your email account through an app on your phone or your computer. You can also access your email account by going online and logging into your service provider's website. So change that password too. Think about all the social media and other platforms, including blogging platforms that you subscribe to. So change your password to Tinder, Grindr, Plenty of Fish, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, any other platform that you happen to have. Go through and change all of them. This will take you some time, but it's going to pay off. It's worth the effort. And so those are a few of my thoughts about dealing with the emotional consequences of separation. I think that of all the stuff I've had to say, some of the most important things are about the importance of building and maintaining good boundaries, but also about the importance of getting help with the emotional repercussions of separation. See a counselor or a psychologist, and whether you decide to do that or not, take a look at those really excellent self-help books, including the writing of Dr. Robert Emery. And if you need any motivation to do things like this, remember that it's not just about your well-being. The improvements in your well-being have a direct impact on your children. So if you don't want to do it for yourself, please think about it and do it for your kids. Thank you.